what is going on? Blossom is back, and welcome back to another episode of Top Drives. Today we return to my series of Blossom's Ultimate Upgrade Guide, or Blossom's Ultimate Fuse Guide, however way you want to call it, and we're going to be working with RQ51. But before we get into that, I just want to give a quick announcement for this guy right here, the Lotus Elite Sport 135. Now, the RQ50 video went super well. A lot of people said it was super informative, super helpful, and that's what I love to hear. I want to help you guys. That's why I make in-depth series like this, and I really do try my best to give the best info based on the experience that I have from playing the game. But one thing that a lot of people were disagreeing with was my recommendation for the fuse for the Lotus Elite 135. A lot of people in the comments were saying that they'd rather 323, that they did 323, and they think 323 is better. Here's the thing, I personally stand by the fact that I 233 my Elite 135. In fact, the one that you see right here is indeed 233, and I've owned it for 1,456 days with over 2,200 races. Now, why I think 233 is better is because the main argument that people were saying that 323 was better for the 135 was because the 323 wins on the slalom compared to the 233. But my counter argument is that what's so shocking about that? You shouldn't be shocked that the 323 beats the 233 in a slalom, because it is relatively common knowledge that when it comes to performance tire ultra rares, 323 is going to win on the slalom and the hairpin road, but 233 is going to win everywhere else. And I'd like to put my 135 on a track set that wins on a tune that wins the majority of the track sets, and therefore I like to go for 233. This is a car that I can depend on because it will beat the 323 on the G-force and the twisty road, etc, etc. So because of that, I'd rather go 233. I like to use my Sport 135 on the G-force, on the twisty circuit, on the twisty road. Usually when it comes to slalom, I would probably use the Caterham 7360, or if I have more RQ, obviously Lotus 340R. So I just wanted to clear that up. That's why I think 233 is better, and I stand by that. But by any means is this a way of saying I don't want you to disagree with me. If you disagree with anything that I have to say about RQ51, let me know down in the comments below. I would love to know what you think, whether you agree or disagree. At the end of the day, we're basically just sharing insights anyway. However, I have seen people give insight that is just absolutely wrong. When that's the case, I would point it out. But anyway, let's get into RQ51. Guys, so here we are, RQ51, Blossom's Ultimate Upgrade Guide, and we are treated with this modern art piece of Mazda RX-7. So let's get into it. We're starting off with 969, and it's very fundamental. No surprises here. Basically just a bunch of all-surface tire cars, a standard tire car, and one off-road. I mean, a couple standard tire cars and one off-road. This is basically what you want to do for anything of these tires. You want to 969 them for ultra rares and for most epics. When we get into epics, we'll talk about the more niche 233 standards when we get there. Next up is going to be 699, and once again, it's no shockers here in my opinion. Everything here is worthy of being 699. A bunch of cars that handle pretty well. The lowest handling car here is 78, and the highest handling car I think is 87. Yeah, that Megane is amazing, by the way. So yeah, a bunch of twisty cars, a bunch of low performance twisty cars, and a mix of not high performance but medium ground clearance twisty cars as well. I think the only medium one actually is the DS3. Everything else here is low, but you get what I mean. These are basically 699 cars. I would do it for the RX-7s, the Shamals, the Mito. Now, one thing to talk about the RX-7s is that the white RX-7, I believe, is the one with the best MRA, and the RX-7, the red one, is special because it's from the 90s. Definitely I would go for the 90s one the most, because I feel like that's the most niche one. Obviously, when it comes to the 2000s, then you have these two fighting each other already, but the 90s one will have it by itself. Also, it was really useful in the Yesco finals. If you remember that, it was like one of the best cars for the slalom. Like, it would beat the Epics. So that's one thing to think about. But yeah, for the most part, really fundamental, a bunch of twisty cars. Once again, if you have any questions for any of these, let me know down in the comments below. But moving on are going to be 996. Now, this is where we get to see a bit of the more controversial picks, I would say. Now, the Countach, the purple Countach, the Thanos Countach, however you want to call it, that is the 996 car. Obviously, it's the best in the test bowl. Actually, now with the introduction of the Bulldog, that might be the best. But then there's also the Charger 3, another Blossom choice, king of the half mile, and and the quarter mile. And then there's the TVR Griffith. The TVR Griffith has 86 MRA. The 0 to 60 is relatively low, obviously not on the levels of the Charger 3. That's why the Charger 3 is fantastic. But you know, it's a car where it's good enough to 332. It has good MRA though, and the handling isn't too bad. And I'll talk about the Griffith more in the next slide. But the next two I want to talk about are going to be the E500 and the Azure. I'll start with the Azure. Now, for the Azure, I would 996 it because I'm capitalizing once again on its biggest strength, which is the high top speed. Obviously, it's nothing compared to the Countach, but it is a pretty good car, relatively good, I say in quotation marks, if you put it against German cars where they're limited to about 155, you know, top speed, or even like the TVR Griffith or the Charger 3, you know, they're both, you know, 155 or under. So the Bentley Azure, I don't know when it will ever be useful. And once again, I know it says RQ50, but it's 51 now. Some of these images are kind of outdated on Top Drives Club, and that's where I sourced the images from. But the Azure, once again, I'm kind of just capitalizing on its biggest strength, right? It already doesn't have the handling. It has a worse handling compared to a car from 1965, for crying out loud. So if anything, I would just 996 it, you know, make that top speed even higher. The 0 to 60 isn't a lost cause either. 5.2, I mean, it's the same as the TVR Griffith, honestly. So I would 996 it. Now here's the one that I want to talk about a little bit more though, and that's the Mercedes-Benz E500. It has amazing MRA, right? 88 MRA on this bad boy. It doesn't handle, so at this point, you don't even want to invest in the handling because it's already so far gone. And so for that, I'm investing not in the top speed, not in the 0 to 60, because it has a low top speed or an average top speed and a poor 0 to 60. I'm 996 in the Mercedes-Benz, literally just on capitalizing on the MRA. Here's the problem of the E500. You don't want to 699 it because it doesn't handle as well, but 996 it, even though it's good for like the quarter mile, it's going to, you know, top out really fast. It's going to cap out really fast because the top speed is so low. And that's what makes the Mercedes-Benz E500 one of the worst cars, really. That's what makes a bad car, you know, a bad car in Top Drives, you know, where even its positives is, you know, canceled out by its negatives. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like when a negative really, you know, drastically outweighs the positive. That's what the E500 is. So what if you have great MRA? Your 0 to 60 is weak, and it's not like that MRA is going to get you very far anyway because you cap out at 155. So you're still going to lose to the Countach on a 1 mile, on a test bowl, and it's going to be the same question for the Bentley. It's going to lose to the Bentley on a test bowl because although the Mercedes has a much better MRA, it doesn't really matter because the top speed just isn't there to back it up. But the next slide I want to talk about are going to be duplicates. Now, for duplicates, I want to say Lamborghini Countach 2, same spec, 332. Charger 3, same spec, 332. Opel Adams, same spec, 323. And Opel OPC Extreme, same spec, 233 or 699. The pretty interesting ones are going to be the TVR Griffith and the Renault Sport. Now, the Renault Sport, duplicates of that because not only it's a good car, but it's viable for 969 and 699. It's kind of like the Lotus Elise 135. 969 is good on the 135, but my recommendations that I'm giving out are basically what I would fuse on the first one I get, and if I only had one. And for the Lotus Elise, I would go 699. Same thing for the Milan. The first one, I would go 699, but if you drop a second, then you can go 969. And the thing with the Griffith, the first one, I would 996, but if I get a second one, I would 699, because it's a pretty decent fast circuit car, because like I said, the handling isn't too far gone. 77, if you 699 that, it's gonna get about 85 handling, which is borderline competent. And with the MRA and the relatively low 0 to 60, it would make for a pretty good fast circuit car. So because of that, I'm only putting the TVR Griffith in duplicates, not because it's fantastic or a blossom choice like the Atom or the Countach or the Charger, but I'm adding it there in duplicates because it is viable in two different tunes, 996 and 699. What would I do first? I would 996 it first, and therefore I put it under the 996 category. Anyway, let me now move on to my RQ51 ranking tier list. Alright guys, so I'm not going to explain this. I explained this in the first episode already. The ranks are going to be the same. Priority 1 is for all players, priority 2 most, priority 3 intermediate players, priority 4 advanced players, and hot garbage obviously are for the collectors. That's basically like if you want every car in the game, or you've already maxed everything out, you got nothing else to collect and max, then those would be your last resort cars. So let's start off with the best of the best, right? We got the Magan, we got the Countach, the Charger. You know, the Charger is your short range drag, your Countach is your long range drag, the Magan is going to be your performance twisty, your CX-9 is going to be your best four-wheel drive standard tire car, because once again, handling means everything, and that is the best handling RQ51 four-wheel drive standard. And finally, the Opel Adam is basically going to be your best off-roader. Now, moving on to priority 2, we're going to see cars like the Opel OPC Extreme, the Cadillac CTS Sport Wagon. Now, you can argue that I should switch the OPC and the Magan, but to be completely honest with you, I do find myself using the Magan more than the OPC Extreme. I don't know why, because the 0 to 60 difference is night and day, but the Opel OPC truly has no MRA. The Cadillac CTS is on the second tier because it handles pretty well, but you know, you're not going to use it too much because it is rear wheel drive. The DS7, you know, is kind of like the Cadillac. It also is a pretty competent car, but you're not going to use it too much because it doesn't have any handling, but it has the four wheel drive. The RX-7, so this basically confirms that these two are the best RX-7s, and it's actually the Spirit R that's the worst. So this white one has the best MRA. This red one has the 90s niche, and this one basically is just the worst of both worlds. So the Mito as well is a pretty decent one, a very low 0 to 60. You want to capitalize on that. It's a bit of a short burst car. The Mito, it's not a dragster. Don't think, oh, that's a low 0 to 60, it's a dragster, because it has no MRA. But it's a short burst car, so it's a car that you might want to put on like a hairpin, where there are a decent amount of turns, but also, you know, small straights or a twisty circuit. And the DS3 performance as well. And then in priority 3, I have cars like the 370Z, the Escalade, the Spirit R, the Solstice, and the 200. As you can see, there's a bit of a hierarchy theme going on over here, especially like with the standard tire cars, because like it's a CX-9, and then beneath the CX-9 is the DS7, and then beneath the DS7 we have no more standard tire cars. And then like with the all-surface tire cars, we have like the X3. If you go up one, it's the XC90. If you go up one, it's the Escalade. If you go up another, it's the Opel Adam, basically. So why is the Escalade in tier 3? In priority 3. Why is it not in priority 4 with the other SUVs? The main thing with the Escalade is, although it doesn't handle, it knows what it wants to be. These SUVs down here, like the Mercedes-Benz or the QX56, they kind of want to be everything. They want to handle a little bit. They want to have, you know, well, they just don't have 0 to 60. They just want to handle a little bit. They want to be a little bit of a dragster. Like, it's not like bad. Like 7.1 is not horrendous. Like 7.8 is worse, but then it doesn't handle. The thing about the Escalade is that the Escalade knows what it wants to be. It wants to be a dragster, right? It's basically your discount Trailblazer. If you can't use the Trailblazer, then the Escalade isn't a bad option because it does have a very low 0 to 60. The difference, once again, night and day. 6.3 compared to 7.1, 7.6, 7.8, and 7.7. So and that's just a dragster. It's a specialist. That's why it's in priority 3. Now for priority 4, we basically have all of the SUVs and the Camaro Z28. Once again, you can see a little bit of a hierarchy theme going on with low performance twisty cars. We have the RX-7, followed by the Solstice, followed by the Camaro Z28, and then followed by the Shamal. The Shamal, I should move it here, so it's just one nice line. So you see, as you can see, they get progressively worse as it goes down, as it should be. And last but not least, in hot garbage, we have the Mercedes-Benz E500. It's pretty much good for nothing. The Bentley Azure, the BMW X3, and finally the Maserati Shamal. I would say that the Shamal is the most useful out of the useless, mainly because of the year that it's from. I know it's 90s, and I know this Mercedes is 90s as well, but honestly, that E500, all it has going for it is the MRA. I get that it's medium, but with that handling, it's still going to be a huge hindrance on the city streets where MRA isn't really required anyway. But anyway, guys, that is going to be my RQ51 Ultimate Guide. Let me know if you disagree or agree with me down in the comments below. A bit of a more chill commentary today, if you will. Let me know if you prefer that or more of the hype. Obviously, I'm not faking any personas here. I can be chill and I can be hype. Usually, you ask all my personal friends, I'm usually the hype one. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. I'm going to stay safe, wash your hands, and blossom out. Peace.